My daughter, Madison, said it best many years ago. She called to check on one of our Hope Weekend intensives. And when she did, to see how many couples saved their marriages, and in that weekend all 5 did, she kind of said, just kind of off the cuff, she goes, well, Dad, you save a marriage, you save a generation. And I went, what? She goes, you save a marriage, you save a generation. I said, Madison, you understand it? She says, understand what? I go, you understand we're doing generational work here? She goes, of course. There's so much data out there and research that talks about kids who grew up in healthy 2-parent homes thrive on all social indicators. And that's not to say if you've been divorced or you've had a broken marriage, that's a bad thing. Divorce is not the unpardonable sin, but we can't hide from the reality that kids still thrive in a healthy 2-parent home where there's a loving marriage on all social indicators. And kids from broken home, me and my wife, you will struggle on some level because the effects of divorce will still play themselves out. All right. The reality is, we do these relate well lives so that you can have a healthy, strong marriage. Because let's be honest, nobody gets married to be miserable. I know I didn't. Been married 37 years, as a matter of fact. And they've been a good 37 years. We've had our bad times, believe me. We've had our challenges and we had to grow up. Emotionally, I was a child when I got married 37 years ago at age 21, 22. I believe I was 22 at the time. But in the reality, though, I had to become a healthy, mature adult. And so, through my journey in developing Relate Well and of course, my academics, PhD, 2 master's degrees, BA, CIA, UFO, EIEIO, a lot of letters. Much of what I've learned and grown with my own journey of healing. And now, Luell and I shared that journey through our Relate Well program, as well as through mentoring, many other ways. So then, are we ready? Today, we're going to talk about dealing with a controlling spouse. Some people think that being controlling is actually unhealthy. And in reality, it isn't. We all, as humans, we need a sense of control over our environment, over our world. We need a sense of control so that we're safe, that we can be protected, because all humans at the biological, visceral, animal level, if I can use that term loosely here, we need safety. We need to know that we're physically safe. We need to know that we're safe in terms of food, air, water, and shelter. And we also need to know that we are emotionally safe. And whenever we don't feel safe, this lower order animal brain right back here, kicks in at about 1/2000 a second, and you're in a fight, flight, or freeze response. That's normal. And personally, you want that part of your brain working. If an 18-wheeler is coming across the interstate at you at 80 miles an hour, you don't want to think about that. You want to react to it. However, you see, that is about having control over your world. But because we need a sense of control, however, we also need to come to terms with the fact that the things we can control are really minute. They're very few. And so we need some control over our world, but we also need to recognize that we can't control everything. And sadly, people who have control issues, anger issues, or even fear will tend to be controlling. They're going to try and control things that are not theirs to control. This is why you hear a lot of talk about healthy boundaries, those kind of things. It's because boundaries let you know what I can or can't control. Boundaries let me know where you stop and I begin. Boundaries let me know that you have the right to think and feel that however you want to think and feel, but I'm not allowed to control how you think and feel. I grew up in a home where I was not allowed to think my way. I was told, why can't you think like everybody else? Example, I was punished because I wanted chocolate ice cream, not vanilla. I couldn't even have a control over that. We need that form of control in our lives. We also need to know and understand that we have very limited control. This is why the Serenity Prayer is so important to so many people around the country, you see, particularly in the 12-step groups, because the Serenity Prayer is about limited control. You're familiar with the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity, which means peace, to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And once we understand that we have limited control, there's only certain things we can control and can't control, then we can find ourselves to become healthy, mature human beings. Because immature people control things that have no business controlling. Mature people, they know what they can and can't control, and they don't step into those things. Because to control something that's not your control is to disrespect another person. You see, respectful people never control another person. Respectful people don't control others. To manipulate someone to get what you want or to threaten them, all that's disrespecting them. We encourage you to live by 4 words, not just by his words themselves, but as a way of being. The 4 words we call the 4 protectors of an us. What are they? Goodwill, respect, humility, and empathy. And when you live a life of goodwill, respect, humility, and empathy, you won't control another person, because you recognize to control another person is disrespectful and there's no goodwill in it. And it's very uncaring. And the reality is, if you're doing those things, you are not in humility. You're in pride. It's about you. So now we're going to talk about, kind of go a little bit into this idea of how do you deal with the controlling spouse? Well, first thing we're going to look at is, why are people controlling? Why are people controlling? What motivates it? Now, you can control in passive aggressive ways, and you can control in overt ways. All right. Anytime you control someone either overtly or passively, it's unhealthy and immature. There are a multitude of reasons people control. I'm going to give kind of 4, overarching reasons. And so let's look at those. Number 1, past hurts and trauma. When you've been hurt, when you've been traumatized, particularly in childhood, you realize as a little child that you have had no control over yourself as a kid. And you've got these big people controlling you, hurting you, harming you. And as you get older, it's almost like your brain says, no one will ever treat me that way again. It's like your brain makes these vows, if you will, that will never happen again. No one will ever talk to me that way. I will never be touched that way again, whatever. And because you never had any control in childhood and people are taking advantage of you when you're little, it's like you grow up and your brain says, never again. And I'm not going to let this happen to me again. So you need to control yourself and others and the environment. Why? So you can stay safe. So you won't experience trauma or abuse again. That you won't be put down or disrespected. One of the reasons that I was controlling is because in my growing up, I always lived in fear of being shocked with a cow prod. I was put down regularly in language. I was told you're never going to measure up. Why can't you be like everybody else? When I got to elementary school, I was the kid picked last to play, kickball. I was made fun of by kids in my classes. And by the time I got to high school, I was deeply insecure. I had no sense of self. And so what I needed to do was try and control my environment so that I wouldn't be hurt or rejected or abandoned. And when I got married, I had these hopes for my marriage, and I found out some of those hopes aren't manifesting themselves. Luella is rejecting me. She's not accepting me. She's critical of me. And so what do? I would become passive aggressive to try and control her to get what I want from her. Not saying I'm proud of it and not saying it was healthy. It is what I did because I was broken, wounded, had a lot of hurts and resolved pains and ways of thinking that kind of motivated my passive aggressive ways of trying to control her. And when I wised up, became self-aware of what I was doing, I cared enough to stop it. So one reason people are controlling is because of past hurts and trauma. Another reason is poor self-esteem. They lack confidence and they lack self-respect. This other reason is people have poor self-esteem. They lack self-confidence and they lack self-respect. And if you want to have good self-esteem and self-confidence, then you want to control the world around you so you can get a semblance of it. And so that's the second reason. A third reason is people who are controlling may have a personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, a psychopath, right? Different names for them. But there are people who have character disorders diagnosed in the DSM-5 as an Axis 2 diagnosis. Some of them are very controlling, like narcissists. You see, narcissists lack empathy. Thus, they want control everything because it's all about them. And some people are controlling because of a pathology, some kind of pathology. Another fourth reason is fear. Fear robs you of actually a sound mind, because when anxiety disorders are really about fear. And when people are fearful and insecure, then what happens is they don't want to be fearful and insecure, right? They're afraid that they're a failure. They're afraid that no one's going to like them. They're afraid that they might get hurt. So the fear elevates the need of whatever it is they're looking for to this all-important stat, and they start to take it. But to take something, you start to control people so that you don't have to feel so afraid anymore. And fear robs you of sound thinking. Because if we had sound mind, we recognize that fear is an emotion, but when we give over to a spirit of fear, you start to lose sound thinking and you'll start to control people, which is really why I was controlling. I was always afraid, insecure, and that fear motivated that.